Hi there, welcome to today's lecture. In this intuition lecture, I'm going to explain to you documenting geographic data. This is one of the topic I really love because it is one of the things that we underestimate its importance. And it's my hope that at the end of this short lecture, you would be convinced the need to have this metadata. So we'll be talking about metadata. And before we start, let's start with a scenario. First of all, imagine you go to buy a product from the shop. Which of these products will you buy? Would you buy the product with the label on my right, or you buy the product without a label? Now let's talk about what a metadata is. So the label that you saw on the product, when we spread it or when we stretch it on a flat plane, is what we have here on our left, and then the label itself is around the container, looks like this on the right. Now the label gives us a couple of information. First of all, it gives us uh, some pictures, imagery, or thumbnails, and then it also gives us information about the ingredients, uh, the nutritional benefit we'll get the ingredients. It gives us information about the time or the expiry time. It gives us information about the authority and which people actually have endorsed it and when it was created, who created or who manufactured this product and stuff. Now, this brings me to metadata. Metadata, like we always say, is data about data. It's similar to what we've just discussed or with the scenario we've just seen, but just that in that scenario, we are talking about product. Metadata is the data about the product, which in this case is data, and it's very critical to GIS. Metadata helps us to understand who created the data, who managed or who is managing the data. It helps us to also understand why was the data created in the first place and why does it look like the way it looks. Sometimes certain data sets are given a specific configuration based on the reason why the data was created. It also tells us when the data was created and when would it gives us an indication when the data is too old to be used or it probably cannot be used depending on the data you are looking out for. And then metadata also explains to us how the data was created and how can we distribute the data. It helps us to also know where the data was taken from and then what is the sources. Could it be that it was taken from another data, already prepared data? Was it a combined of multiple data sources, or was it coming from a field data collection? Metadata is the only thing about the data we take from people or we take from organization that can tell us about what where this informations are coming from. So now let's try to combine the two scenarios we've spoken about. So in this label or the label around the container that we saw or the tin that we saw. Now this tells us, or the first one gives us a title, and the title is breakfast cereals. The title gives us a very clear indication of what the whole product is. So the breakfast cereals gives us indication that this is for breakfast. Now it also it gives us an indication what we should expect. So in the second one, it gives us indication what we could expect. And we know that this is made of mango and then honey. And so if you've taken mango before, honey before, you have quite an idea of what do you think the taste should be like. It tells us about what is contained in the data. So this serial, for instance, tells us the nutritional benefits you will get from the data. It also tells us about what did they use to make it, what are the ingredients. So in the metadata, we get to know about what was used to make it. It tells us about who approved the data. So 5 and 6 are telling us which people really approved this data. This is more like adding some sort of authority to it and giving us confidence or building our confidence within the data. And then it also tells us what we should be aware of. So this particular container tells us that, or this particular label help us to understand that we should be aware of certain content that is already in this product. If you if you are if you want to use it for something that doesn't require that this substance should be in, then you are warned from the label already on the go. You won't buy it and bring it to home to the house before you realize that it is not fit for what you need. And then you also get to know about what are the limitations, and so you get to know the things that you. So here we are told about the product may not be suitable for asthma and uh, people who have allergy issue. It's the same thing with metadata that we get from our data or our GIS data. That this metadata is going to warn us about things that we cannot use the data for. Sometimes I think generally it would you would have an indication about the scale at which the data was produced and the scale at which you can actually use the data. And so this is very important because when you mix scales in your analysis or when you mix scales to build a data or to create a data, you create an inherent problem that is very difficult to identify when it starts resurfacing in your analysis. Now, it gives us an indication also about who made the data or who made this product, who created the data in the first place. And we need to know the original person who created the data. And it tells you about when you can't use the data. It has a timestamp. At what point can can you use the data? Is it a phenomenon that expires frequently? Is it a phenomenon that only exists temporal and it's not something that is always available? So to what extent or at what point can't we use the data in terms of time? It helps us to understand when was it created. It gives us the timestamp. I think some of the labels you see on containers will tell you both the manufacturing date and then the expiry date, and it tells us where was it made. And so this product helps us to understand that it was made in Singapore. And these are informations that are very valuable to many of us. And that's the reason why we would want to take the product that has a label against the product that has no label, even if the product that has no label is super cheaper than the one that has label, because we have no idea in what is contained in the one that doesn't have a label. Okay, so now why do we talk about metadata? Metadata is very important because for data maintenance, it plays a very key role in helping us to track the changes and revisions that has occurred within the data and helps us facilitate the efficient management of the data. It also helps us to update the data or get information about the update of the data. We get to know about informations such as the contact, the support or contact for us to be able to receive support if we need. It will help us to understand how the data is distributed or should be distributed. It helps us to understand the policies, the details of authoritative or URLs of authorities that are involved in the data. So we get to know about these informations, and with this we get to be abreast with the update. How current is this data? How, if for instance a data is referencing or contains a URL of an organization that no longer exists, then that gives you an indication about the last time the data probably was updated. If it's not explicitly stated in the metadata, you will have an indication of that. It gives you an indication of the intention behind the whole data. So you take a data, or you you download the data from somewhere, and you do not know why the data was created. For various reasons, the reasons or the intentions behind data creation influences the output of the data. So the final data in your hand is actually a product of the intentions for which the data the data was created in the first place. So certain informations are not found in the data not because they did not exist, but because probably the purpose for which the data was collected, those specific ones you are interested in, was not interesting to them, or they did not need it, so they didn't capture it. And so we need to be able to get these intentions to be able to make good interpretations. If not, we will do a lot of misinterpretation. It helps us to also understand the constraints of the data. Sometimes some of the data sets have some constraints that we need to know. It tells us to the point of the quality of the data, the applicability of the data, what the data can be applied to and stuff. The the people who created the data, or the first hand creator of the data, can give you more information about these than the one who received the data as a secondary owner. We also get to know about how complete the data is. Um, and remember, these things are all subjective based on the intentions behind the data. So we get to know all these informations about the data. We have we have just discussed, in summary, we've just discussed about metadata. We've just introduced ourselves to what really is metadata. Why do we need metadata? And hopefully, I believe that I have been able to inspire you to start to think about metadata. In our subsequent lectures, we would go into talk a bit deeper into metadata, and we will delve deep into when we get to a point where we believe that you would have the ability to make good decisions about metadata. In our class, when you join the one-on-one class, you will be taken by the instructors practically how to create metadata, and you go through all these processes, know how the metadata format and everything goes. But until then, I'll see you in the next lecture.